Here we are with the complete list of top 10 most insane prison breaks in world history. Stories that will keep you at the edge of your seat and wondering the minds people use to come together with such ideas. If you missed part 1, go back and watch after this video. From helicopter escapes, climbing walls, dashing out of courtrooms, these stories are truly fascinating. Please subscribe to our channel if you are a lover of true crime documentaries. Now, let's begin. On number 5, we have the story of Alfred George Hinds, better known as the Human Eel. A man who slipped through the fingers of the law, not once, not twice, but 3 unforgettable times. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a spy. He wasn't a magician. He was a self-taught safecracker. And he outsmarted the British prison system in ways that left officials stunned for years. Let's go back to London in 1953. Alfred Hines was serving a 12-year sentence at Nottingham Prison for a jewelry-related crime he said he didn't commit. That sentence would soon become just a small part of what made him famous. Now, Alfred didn't come from a privileged background. He was born in 1917, and life for him had never been smooth. He had lived through rough streets and hard knocks. During World War II, he served in the army, but when the war ended, the fight for survival turned into a battle against the law. And Alfred Hines wasn't just a criminal, he was a thinker, a plotter, a man with a burning drive to rewrite his story. His first major act of defiance came just 8 months into his sentence. While most inmates adjusted to prison routines, Hines was studying his surroundings, memorizing every detail of the prison layout. And one day, opportunity knocked. He waited for the perfect moment, slipped into a bathroom, and using a homemade key and a quiet determination, he unlocked a door most believed could never be opened from the inside. From there, he scaled a 20-foot prison wall, dropped onto the other side, and melted into the crowd on the outside. Just like that, Alfred Hines was gone. No one saw him go. No alarms went off. He had disappeared into thin air. Prison officials were stunned. How did a man escape such a secure prison without anyone noticing? The media called him the Human Eel because of how easily he slipped out of tight spaces. The name stuck, and so did his legend. Once out, Alfred didn't just go into hiding. He lived openly for over 2 years. He changed his name, got a passport, and even worked in Ireland and parts of Europe. He used his wits to blend in, staying just one step ahead of the law. But his past was never far behind. After more than 2 years of freedom, police finally caught up with him in London. A sharp-eyed officer recognized him from a wanted poster. He was arrested and sent back to serve the rest of his sentence. But Alfred wasn't done. He wasn't just focused on escape anymore. He wanted justice. He believed he had been wrongfully convicted, and he started preparing to prove it. But the legal system was slow. Months passed, and his appeal requests were delayed. So in typical Hines fashion, he decided to take matters into his own hands. It was 1956, and Hines was back in court, this time to present a legal petition. While everyone focused on the paperwork, Alfred was focused on the windows. In a move that would stun the court, Alfred suddenly made a dash for the bathroom during a recess. Inside, he locked the door, climbed out the window, and vanished once again, right from under the noses of judges and security. It took guards 15 minutes to realize he was gone. Just imagine the courtroom. Papers flying, guards shouting, officials looking around in disbelief. He'd done it again, and no one had seen it coming. Hines was now back on the run, and this time he became a full-blown national sensation. Newspapers couldn't stop writing about him. People whispered his name in pubs and train stations. Children heard bedtime stories about the man who escaped from court. But he wasn't just hiding. He was writing letters, filing lawsuits, arguing his case, and perhaps the most amazing part? He wasn't even a trained lawyer, but he understood the law so well, he managed to file multiple legal actions while on the run. Then came the third escape. Eventually, in 1957, he was recaptured again, this time in Ireland. He was returned to a prison in Chelmsford, where authorities promised no more mistakes. They placed him under constant watch. Extra locks were added. Movement was restricted. But Alfred Hines was a man with time, and a mind that never stopped working. Using a smuggled file, bits of string, and detailed timing, he managed to pick the lock of his cell, climb through a skylight, and scale yet another wall. But luck ran out on this one. He was spotted just outside the prison, arrested once again, and this time, held in conditions so tight that escape was finally made impossible. Yet even behind the thickest walls, Alfred didn't slow down. He turned his full attention to the courtroom. He studied legal documents for hours, learned every rule, every procedure. He challenged his sentence again and again. And in a twist no one expected, he actually won a key appeal using legal arguments he prepared himself. He didn't walk out a free man that day, but he did something almost harder. He forced the justice system to listen. Eventually, in the mid-1960s, Alfred Hines was released for good. No more escapes. No more cells. He went on to live a quiet life as a legal advisor. Yes, a man once hunted by the police across countries was now helping others navigate the same legal system that had once tried to silence him. He never robbed again. He never tried to escape again. And he remained a living symbol of resilience, intelligence, and an unbreakable will. On number 4, we have the twisted story of Michel Vaujour and his daring wife. Michel Vaujour wasn't born into a life of high walls and locked gates. But over time, through a series of wrong decisions and wild pursuits, he became a name feared by the authorities and whispered in admiration among outlaws. His story would come to define one of the most daring escapes France or the world has ever seen. Let's rewind to the 1980s in Paris, a city of lights, love, and for Michel, a city of crime. He was a man consumed not just by ambition, but by an addiction to risk. Michel had been convicted of multiple robberies, bold heists, that showed a level of planning far beyond the average. He wasn't reckless. He was methodical, calculated, and stubbornly determined. That mindset earned him a 30-year prison sentence, housed in one of France's most secure facilities, La Santé prison in Paris. But here's the thing about Michel, he was never one to sit still. To him, a cell was just a temporary inconvenience. He believed that any structure made by humans could be unmade. And when you added something even more dangerous than ambition, love, to the mix, the result became explosive. And that's exactly where Nadine Vajger comes into the story. Michel's wife wasn't a trained pilot. She wasn't even someone the authorities viewed as a threat. But Michel had something most prisoners didn't, a partner who was ready to risk it all. Nadine wasn't just supportive. She was the architect of his dream of freedom. While Michel sat behind bars plotting his next move, Nadine was out in the real world laying the foundation for something that seemed straight out of a movie. She started by taking flying lessons quietly, without raising suspicion. Instructors thought she was just another middle-aged woman chasing a new hobby. But every takeoff and every landing she practiced had one mission in mind: breaking her husband out of prison. Now imagine this. The year is 1986. The guards at La Santé prison are going about their routine. Nothing feels out of the ordinary. Michel is in the recreation yard, a secure area surrounded by high walls and constant surveillance. The sky above is clear. But within minutes, everything changes. A helicopter, small and fast, begins to descend from the sky. It doesn't belong there. At first, the guards think it's some kind of mistake. Maybe a civilian lost their way. But as the aircraft hovers directly over the yard and ropes are dropped, the reality hits them. Michel knows this is his moment. He runs, jumps onto the rope, and clings on as the helicopter lifts off with stunned guards frozen in disbelief. In less than a minute, Michel Vaujour is no longer a prisoner. He is airborne, gliding over the rooftops of Paris in a machine piloted by his wife. Now, to call this a prison break would be an understatement. It was an aerial extraction, the kind of thing you'd expect from a spy novel or a Hollywood script. But it was very real. Nadine flew the helicopter with calm precision, landing it on a nearby football field where a getaway car was waiting. From there, the couple disappeared into the streets of Paris. And for the authorities? It was total chaos. The French government launched one of the largest manhunts in the country's history. Every border was alerted. Every known associate was questioned. But Michel and Nadine had vanished like smoke in the wind. They stayed hidden for months, relying on safe houses and coded messages. Michel even underwent surgery to change his appearance, using fake identities to move through cities. It was a life constantly on the run, but for the Vajgers, it was a life of freedom. But freedom, especially the stolen kind, comes with a heavy price. During a failed attempt to rob an armored vehicle months later, Michel was seriously injured. A bullet struck him in the head. He survived, but the injury left lasting effects. The authorities finally caught up with him as he lay in recovery. This time, the bars weren't going to be so easy to escape. Michel was sent back to prison, and Nadine too was arrested. Despite her role in the escape, many saw her as more than an accomplice. Some called her foolish, others brave. But for Michel, she was the woman who believed in his freedom more than the system ever did. Years passed. Michel served his time quietly. No more dramatic stunts, no more spotlight, just time long and unforgiving. But even then, he refused to be defined by his past. He later gave interviews, sharing his story not with arrogance, but reflection. He spoke of how his desire for control, his thirst for freedom, and his love for Nadine had led him to one of the boldest acts in modern criminal history. Eventually, Michel was released on parole. Unlike many escape artists whose lives spiral after recapture, Michel stepped away from that world. In the twilight of his life, he found peace in anonymity. The story of Michel Vaujour and Nadine isn't just about a prison break. It's a story about love, risk, and the power of belief. Nadine had no background in crime, but she learned to fly, planned a heist that involved airspace, timing, and nerves of steel, and she pulled it off. Not with weapons, not with threats, but with precision and passion. Number 3, Carlos Ghosn, the most recent of them all. He had it all: power, influence, and the kind of success most people only dream about. He was a titan in the automotive world, the man credited with saving not one but two of the world's major car manufacturers, Nissan and Renault. They called him Le Cost Killer for his ruthless efficiency and his unmatched ability to turn around failing companies. In Japan, he was seen as a genius, a man who had helped revive their auto industry. But behind the boardroom doors and flashing cameras was a storm quietly building. It was 2018 when everything changed. Carlos Ghosn was arrested in Tokyo, accused of underreporting his income and misusing company assets. He was taken into custody at the airport as he arrived by private jet. The allegations shocked the world. How could a man once hailed as a hero become the center of such a massive scandal? But the case was complicated. Ghosn insisted he was innocent. He claimed it wasn't justice, it was a plot, a corporate betrayal. According to him, some executives at Nissan were uncomfortable with the merger plans between Nissan and Renault. He believed they set him up to stop the deal and remove him from power. Whether that was true or not, one thing was certain: Ghosn's life would never be the same again. He was placed in a tiny Tokyo jail cell, confined, monitored, and stripped of the privileges he'd once enjoyed. He spent months there under intense interrogation, without a lawyer present. The Japanese legal system is strict, and for someone used to the luxuries of the corporate world, it was like being dropped into another universe. Eventually, he was granted bail, but the conditions were severe. He was placed under house arrest, monitored 24/7, and forbidden from contacting his wife. His phones were tapped, his emails watched, and cameras tracked his every move. The house he stayed in looked normal from the outside, but inside it was a cage with invisible bars. And then came the escape. It was December 29th, 2019. The world was preparing for a new year. No one, not even his closest friends, knew what Ghosn was planning. He was calm, quiet, patient. He knew that any mistake would cost him his freedom, maybe forever. That day, a group of men entered his Tokyo residence, dressed as musicians. They were part of a hired team, specialists in logistics and security, but their instruments were just a cover. One of them carried a large black audio equipment case, the kind used for concert speakers. No one suspected a thing. Inside the house, the men moved quickly. Cameras were avoided, routines followed. They placed the case on the floor, opened it, and Carlos Ghosn climbed inside, just like that. The case was closed, sealed tight, and carried out of the home. Security guards at the entrance didn't bat an eye. After all, it was just another day and just some musicians with their gear. The case was loaded into a van, then driven to a private airport hours away. When they reached the airport, the case passed through security. Somehow it wasn't scanned, it wasn't opened. Maybe it was the timing, maybe it was the trust. Whatever it was, it worked. The case, with Ghosn inside, was loaded onto a private jet headed to Istanbul, Turkey. At this point, no one in Japan had any idea what had happened. Ghosn had simply vanished. In Istanbul, another jet was waiting. He was transferred to a second plane and flown to Beirut, Lebanon, a country that has no extradition treaty with Japan. By the time Japanese authorities realized he was missing, he was already out of reach. When news of the escape broke, it felt like a scene from a movie. The billionaire executive escaping in a box, outsmarting an entire legal system, and disappearing into the night. The world was stunned. How did a man under constant surveillance manage to pull off such an escape? Who helped him? How long had he been planning it? Those were the questions everyone was asking. Investigations were launched. Several people were arrested, including 2 American citizens who were accused of helping organize the operation. But Ghosn was out. And he wasn't coming back. In Beirut, he called a press conference. Cameras flashed as he entered the room, now a free man. He spoke for hours, calmly explaining his side of the story. He said he had no choice, that he was being treated unfairly and had to escape to save his life. He said he trusted the legal systems in most countries, but not the one he had just fled. His story became the subject of books, documentaries, and debates. Some saw him as a hero who outwitted a system stacked against him. Others saw him as a man who ran away from justice. Whatever your opinion, one thing is true. The escape of Carlos Ghosn was one of the most unbelievable prison breaks in modern history. It didn't involve breaking chains or digging tunnels. There was no violence, no chaos. Just strategy, precision, and a man who refused to be caged. Second on our list, we have what has been tagged the most daring breakout in UK history, the Maze prison escape. There are prison escapes. And then there are prison events that feel like they were written for the big screen. On a cold September afternoon in 1983, the impossible happened inside one of the most heavily guarded prisons in the United Kingdom. A place known not just for its towering walls, surveillance, and armed guards, but also for the dangerous men it held. The Maze prison, officially called Her Majesty's Prison Maze, stood in Northern Ireland and was designed to be unbreakable. Concrete walls, layers of fencing, watchtowers, routine checks, and over 1,000 guards on rotation. The prison had a reputation for toughness, and for good reason. It was built to contain the most politically sensitive prisoners of the time, members of the Provisional Irish Republican Army, or IRA. Many of these inmates were serving long sentences for activities related to the conflict in Northern Ireland. Inside, there were tensions. Not just between guards and inmates, but between ideologies and systems, between survival and submission. It was a powder keg, and nobody saw what was coming. But it didn't start with violence, it started with patience, planning, precision. For months, a small group of men inside H Block 7 quietly plotted the largest prison escape in UK history. And it wasn't about chaos, it was about control. They observed routines, counted steps, timed responses. They even monitored shift changes and supply truck arrivals. And over time, they started preparing piece by piece. The tools were smuggled in over weeks. Small firearms, fake uniforms, handwritten maps, and communications all passed through secret channels. It was meticulous, every detail noted, every guard shift recorded. The inmates communicated using coded language, sometimes carved into walls or passed on scraps of paper hidden in food trays. And then, the day came. September 25, 1983. In the early afternoon, a food delivery truck routine and predictable rolled into H Block 7. But this time it was different. It had been targeted as the vehicle for escape. Inside the prison, 38 IRA inmates were prepared. Each man had a role. There were those assigned to distract, others to overpower, and a few selected to secure key checkpoints. When the moment struck, the action was fast and intense. They overpowered several guards using stealth and surprise. Weapons smuggled or improvised were used to gain control without attracting widespread alarm. One by one, keys were taken, security doors opened, and blockades removed. Then came the truck. It was hijacked with the driver still inside. As the vehicle moved forward, the inmates piled into the back, pressing themselves low behind crates and supplies, their hearts pounding with anticipation. But freedom wasn't as simple as driving out. At the final gate, things got complicated. One guard resisted and managed to raise partial alarm. Others attempted to close off exits or radio for help. In the chaos, a few prisoners were recaptured. Some guards were hurt. But the truck broke through. In the end, 38 men made it out. Most vanished into the nearby countryside, gone within minutes. A few were captured within days, but many weren't. Some reached safe houses. Others left the country. A few are still believed to have never been found. The breakout sent shockwaves across the UK. It wasn't just a matter of prison security. It had political weight. Questions were asked in Parliament. Investigations were launched into how this could happen in such a high-security facility. How did firearms get inside? How could 38 men coordinate such a massive escape under constant surveillance? The Maze prison, once seen as impenetrable, was exposed as vulnerable. Over 20 guards were injured that day. More than 10 were held hostage for short periods. The emotional aftermath left scars, and for years, new systems were put in place to avoid anything like it happening again. But for the prisoners involved, this wasn't just a jailbreak, it was, in their view, a mission. One that challenged the system they believed was oppressing them. One that made history. And whether you agree or not with their motives, the Maze prison escape remains one of the boldest, best coordinated, and most legendary prison escapes the world has ever seen. A reminder that sometimes the greatest escapes don't involve scaling walls with ropes or tunneling beneath fences. Sometimes they come from careful planning, deep conviction, and the will to disappear into the open. Number 1. On the top of our list is the most popular escape of all times. It is the escape that actually inspired the movie, The Great Escape, but this time we aren't talking fiction. We are talking about a real-life scenario. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, do well to click the subscribe button and hit the notification bell to never miss any of our stories. Also, click the like button if you're enjoying this video. Now, back to the story. In the middle of a frozen forest in Nazi Germany, buried beneath the snow and behind layers of barbed wire, stood Stalag Luft 3, a prisoner of war camp so tightly secured, so closely monitored, that no one believed escape was even a possibility. Built specifically to hold captured Allied airmen, it was considered escape-proof. But in 1944, a group of determined men would change that belief forever. A daring escape involving 76 men, months of underground work, and an operation so well coordinated that it's been studied in military history classes ever since. Stalag Luft 3 was located in what is now Vajger, Poland. Back then, it was deep in German territory. It held mostly British and Commonwealth officers, pilots, navigators, and crewmen whose planes had been shot down behind enemy lines. The Germans figured these men, clever and resourceful as they were, needed to be kept under extra tight watch. The camp had several built-in security features to prevent tunneling. The huts where prisoners lived were raised off the ground so guards could easily spot digging underneath. The soil itself was yellow sand, easy to notice when mixed with the dark soil on the surface. And then there were microphones planted around the perimeter to detect underground movement. It seemed like escape was off the table, but the Allied prisoners had other plans. It started with squadron leader Roger Bushell, a South African-born RAF officer. He'd already attempted 2 escapes before being recaptured. But this time, in Stalag Luft 3, he had a new vision, not just to break out himself, but to help as many fellow prisoners as possible. He called it the Big X Plan. His goal? Get at least 200 men out of the camp in one night. Not just to taste freedom, but to create disruption to force the Germans to divert resources away from the front lines to search for the escapees. This wasn't just an escape. It was a military strategy. The plan involved digging not 1 but 3 tunnels codenamed Tom, Dick, and Harry. They'd dig simultaneously, so if one was discovered, the others could carry on. These tunnels weren't simple holes in the ground, they were underground highways, 30 feet below the surface and over 300 feet long. Each tunnel had wooden walls, ventilation systems made from powdered milk cans, and even electric lighting powered by wires stolen from the camp. The men created a trolley system using bedboards and scavenged materials to move dirt and people through the tunnels. And what about the sand? It couldn't be dumped just anywhere. So the prisoners developed ingenious methods to dispose of it. Some sewed secret pouches into their trousers, filled them with sand, and then casually walked around the camp dispersing it as they moved. Others used fake gardening tools to mix the sand into topsoil. Over 600 prisoners were involved in the construction, each assigned specific tasks, from forging documents, to tailoring civilian clothes, to crafting compasses out of melted phonograph records. This wasn't chaos. This was order. Military-level organization, and it was all done under the noses of their captors. Finally, on the night of March 24, 1944, Tunnel Harry was ready. It was bitterly cold, perfect weather for what they were about to attempt. Everything had been rehearsed. They had a launch order, forged documents, disguises, and specific trains to catch once outside the camp. But even with all that preparation, things quickly went off script. When they broke through to the surface, they discovered the tunnel had come up short of the forest line, right in the open. The exit was just a few feet inside the perimeter fence, dangerously exposed to the watchtowers. They had to improvise. So instead of a steady stream of escapees, only one man could crawl out at a time. They had to carefully time their exits between searchlight sweeps. This slowed everything down drastically. Still, through grit and coordination, 76 men crawled out of the tunnel and disappeared into the cold night air. Some went on foot, some caught trains. A few tried to get to neutral countries. It was, by all standards, an incredible feat. But then came the backlash. Within days, the Germans had mobilized a massive manhunt. All available forces were deployed to recapture the escapees. In total, 73 out of the 76 were caught. Only 3 men Norwegians Per Bergsland and Jens Muller and Dutch pilot Bram van der Stok made it home safely. What happened next remains one of the darkest shadows over the story. Without trial, 50 of the recaptured men were executed on direct orders from Nazi leadership. Their names are now inscribed on memorials, and their courage is remembered not only for the escape but for the stand they took in the face of injustice. The Great Escape wasn't just about running away. It was about hope, resistance, and brotherhood. It was a demonstration of what the human spirit is capable of, even when locked away, watched constantly, and surrounded by barriers both physical and mental. This escape sparked outrage across the world and changed how prisoners of war were treated. It also became the subject of books, documentaries, and of course the 1963 film The Great Escape, which turned these real-life heroes into legends. But nothing Hollywood could script compares to what these men actually did, digging, planning, and coordinating one of the most daring escapes in human history, all under the watchful eye of a hostile regime. Did you enjoy the video? Give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Check out the next video on your screen to enjoy more thrilling stories.